All right. All right. Warm greetings from Washington, D.C. My name is Sherry Mueller, and it's my privilege on behalf of the Public Diplomacy Council of America to welcome each of you in this audience here at GW University, our in-person audience, and also to welcome all of you online who have tuned in to this PDCA First Monday Forum, where we're featuring a topic that is very close to many of our hearts, and that's the unprecedented challenges, the future of the State Department and public diplomacy, something all of us in this room care deeply about. I want to thank you very much for coming, and a special thanks to Michele Sumilas, who is the National Engagement Director for the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. Our very own Vivian Walker, co-president, is going to serve as our moderator today and interview Michele. And after they do some of that going back and forth, there will be space for questions, both for those of you online in the Q&A box and those of you here at our microphone. I want to thank our co-sponsors for today. Of course, PDCA is our host, and the George Washington University Institute for Public Diplomacy and Global Communication. Also, the USC Annenberg Center for Communication Leadership and Policy. And also delighted that the Association for Diplomatic Studies and Training is also a co-sponsor of this event. Susan Johnson, their president, is here. Susan, thank you for that and all you do. And as all of you know who've ever put on an event, it takes a team. And the PDCA team, who've been heavily involved with this, Mike Korpf, our co-chair of our communications committee, Judy Kang, co-chair of our program committee, our tech host, Lam, Sydney, our intern Lam is our Hans Tom Tuck fellow, graduate fellow, and Christina Shu. Christina, thank you for all your help. She's with the Institute here at GW. I want to thank those of you who made you feel very welcome. Jennifer Galt and Joseph D'Agostino, Josh Manley, and thank you so much for being part of our team that brings you this today and brings you this program today. And Bruce Guthrie, our intrepid photographer with a sense of humor, is on the job. And Bruce, we're always grateful that you share your expertise so generously with us. When I was thinking about how do I introduce Vivian Walker, who's our moderator today, and I thought about the PDCA mission to promote excellence and honor achievement, and Ambassador Greta Morris, thank you for adding that, to honor achievement in our mission, but to promote excellence and honor achievement in the professional practice, the academic study, and advocacy for public diplomacy. And Vivian has served in the Foreign Service. She's the practitioner. She became, you retired as a minister counselor. She's a scholar. She's a practitioner in residence at the Walsh School of Foreign Service, and has done a lot of writing, and is award-winning former editor or chair of the editorial board of the Foreign Service Journal. And many of you know her as the former executive director of the U.S. Commission on Public Diplomacy. And you know that she's an articulate advocate for our field. So I can't think of anyone better to interact with our colleague from the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. Vivian, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that generous introduction, and welcome again to everybody. It's such a pleasure to see so many friends and colleagues, past, present, and in this audience today. We are very fortunate indeed to have with us Michele Sumilas, who is in her current capacity as the National Engagement Director at the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition, really ideally situated to help us take on discussion of the significant challenges that are before us today. At the coalition, she's currently leading its strategic outreach with stakeholders across the country to support a strong and effective international affairs budget. From 2021 to 25, she served in various capacities, U.S. Agency for Assistance, International Assistance, Deputy Administrator for Management and Resources, Assistant to the Administrator for the Bureau of Planning, Learning, and Management, and really in both of these capacities serving as a core Chief Executive, Chief Operating Officer function. Previously, she served as the Executive Director of Bread for the World, an anti-hunger advocacy organization. And other significant government experience includes serving as the USAID Chief of Staff and Deputy Chief of Staff during the Obama administration, and importantly, on the House Subcommittee on State and Foreign Operations. And prior to serving in government, she worked at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Global Health Council. All of this to make the case that she brings a wealth of diplomatic, development, executive, legislative, and private sector experience to the effort to strengthen our nation's civilian tools of development and diplomacy in the service of our national security and prosperity. So truly no better an interlocutor for these difficult times. So as we promised, this is going to be an interview format, and we're going to go through a few questions, and then we will continue the interview format with all of you as the interlocutors following a few questions. So let me start off by asking you, Michele, to tell us a little bit about the history and founding of the USGLC.
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me and having USGLC. I think I have worked in many capacities, as you mentioned, at USAID and in the private sector and nonprofits, and have watched all of my State Department colleagues, especially those in public diplomacy, do such important work. We collaborated extensively. And actually now I'm collaborating with your advocacy organizations that work on international exchanges. But I'm now currently serving at USGLC. USGLC is a 30-year-old this year coalition of organizations across the business sector, academia, nonprofits, for-profit contractors, and people around the country who care about the international affairs budget. We have a very strong presence here in Washington. We work closely with the Hill. You may know us from our annual tribute dinner where we honor various members of Congress. We, over the years, have honored both Republicans and Democrats. We are very bipartisan. I think the new word is nonpartisan, everyone is saying. But we have worked with many, many Republicans and Democrats across the years to really support the foreign affairs budget. And we also have 34 advisory councils around the country in 34 different states that are made up of people who are in business, people who are in academia, people who are leaders in their communities, mayors, commissioners, other things like that. We hold events across the country. Some of them are big, some of them are smaller. We had 3 events in April with 3 Republican senators, including a 500-person event in Utah with Senator Curtis. We were the only public venue that many of them have been willing to go to in the last 6 or 9 months. You can all chuckle, I chuckle myself too. They all are positive and affirming at home in the districts. And then we also are working with them very closely here in Washington privately as they engage with state and others. So it's a difficult time, but we continue to forge ahead and we'll continue to be working. We also have something called the National Security Advisory Council, which is about 300 retired generals and other members of the armed forces who also are part of our coalition, speak out, talk about the importance of development as part of the diplomacy, defense, trifecta, things that should happen. So we will continue to work really hard with our veteran population, farmers, academia, former diplomats, former USAID practitioners, and other business partners who care deeply about these programs.
Well, it sounds like you're doing an extraordinary job in doing that. The thing that's become so important, that domestic outreach on the value of what the foreign affairs community does externally on behalf of the country, but also on the value of development and assistance. And Susan and I, in fact, were just talking about that earlier. Along those lines, could you talk a little bit more specifically about some of the initiatives that you're undertaking to support the diplomacy and development components of this international affairs budget?
Yes. So I am not going to cherry coat. I'm not going to paint a beautiful picture. We all know what's happening and what has happened to USAID and the State Department. It's been a really difficult time. I think a lot of what we've been doing is trying to really work to change the narrative around the programs that are out there, things that have happened. I think they were able to cherry pick a few things and really amplify those in ways that made it look like the entire international affairs budget was doing very small things. And so I think I know we've been doing a couple things. I've been working with USGLC since February to do advocacy here in Washington, but also at the state level. So we've been working across the international affairs community. As I said, we've been working with organizations that care about different development sectors, people who care about outreach, who care about the defense, the FMF funding, the NADER funding, the INCL funding, every single kind of funding you can think about at the State Department to really tell the story about what you all do. We've been talking about public diplomacy. We've been talking about the exchange programs, why we shouldn't be throwing out the baby with bathwater. So lots of work that's been going on. We have been working across all of those communities to get letters and calls into members of Congress. And to date, from February to August, we had 1.2 million letters and calls that went into Congress, which when you think about AARP, who gets tens of thousands, tens of millions of letters, doesn't sound like a lot. But members of Congress who heard about international affairs said somebody's doing something. We never get this many calls and letters. We've been working across the DC community on messaging and making sure that messaging around how international assistance is national security, is economic growth, is economic security. All of the messages are we all live in an ecosystem, so we make sure that everybody is getting everything. Also talking about the life-saving impact of a lot of the programs. And then we have released several different publications to try to so that we can engage with the Hill and with the administration, and we are doing that on a continuous basis. The one publication that I just brought a couple copies, but it's called A Blueprint for America to Win in the World. And this is really an opportunity for members of Congress to think about how can we reimagine foreign assistance and how can we do it differently and what could be some of the new features of that. And we saw some of the ideas that were in this document get picked up in the Global Health Security Strategy that came out recently. And then finally, as I said, we've been trying to make the connection between economic security and national security and working very closely with our business partners to talk about their investments overseas and why that public diplomacy, public engagement is so important for them to be successful. I think that there is a lot of work to be done. I will say that there are many supporters of what we do on Capitol Hill, and they're working behind the scenes to try to do what they can.
Well, a number of the things that you've outlined to include the reaching out to the Hill, the messaging, are things that we're looking at and doing within the PDCA. But we know we could get better at doing advocacy. We can always do that. What would be some of your recommendations for PDCA for the members as individuals? And
sorry,
yeah, all right. For the members as individuals, but also through the association itself to better educate Congress about the importance of public diplomacy and its contribution to national security and prosperity. So if you could sort of bring it down a level to ways that those of us in this room, for example, or out there online could do more.
So a couple things I would say. We are working with many, many different people. Can you hear me? Or should I can remove it and hold it? Okay. So I think we're working with lots of people across the country to ask them to talk publicly about these issues and privately with their members of Congress and with others in their communities to get them. So one thing I would say is speak from your experience. Talk about what you did and how all of these things need to all be the ecosystem of programs and efforts that the State Department and other agencies support all need to be happening, all need to be important, and all need to be funded. don't be shy. Members of Congress are there to hear you. And their district offices are just as important. I actually think district offices are more important in some cases than their Washington offices. Their Washington offices receive lots of phone calls. They tick that you called, you cared about international affairs. That's as far as they're going to get in Washington because they get so many calls. Back in the district, they're more likely to listen, more likely to provide details, and all of that gets wrapped up and goes to the member of Congress on a regular basis. But I think you talk from experience, use examples, pick countries that are politically important in this administration. We know what those are. You can figure out how to do that. Also speak their language. This is the other place I think that we have lost, is that I speak in development speak. You talk in public diplomacy speak. They look at us and they nod their head and they say, yes, we understand why it's important, but they actually probably don't really tangibly understand exactly what you're talking about. So think about we often say, think that you're speaking to an 8th grade student and talk to them about what you do. Describe it in language that they understand. It's not that members of Congress and their staff are not really smart. They absolutely are. It's just that they're going to hang up the phone and talk to in a 60-minute time, they may have 6 different phone calls on 6 different topics, from Medicare to disability to international assistance. And so they're not spending a lot of time thinking and ruminating on what you've shared. So I think those would be my suggestions. Also, think about who in your community also shares your beliefs. So if you happen to know someone in your community who owns a company that does work overseas, then engage with that person and encourage them to carry your message. So for example, we did an event with Congressman Chuck Edwards, who's on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He very publicly told us that he was going to be voting for the rescissions package and that he thought there was space for reductions in the State Department budget, but he was willing to engage with us. We went to a factory, a manufacturing company in his district that makes armor and other materials for the fight in Ukraine. And he was very, very engaged. And since then, we've had lots of good conversations with him, both about Ukraine and overall about the State Department budget. He met with many constituents who were working there, some Ukrainian Americans who had recently been able to come to the US and others who'd been here a long time. But this is how we're trying to think about international assistance. We often have been very focused on the benefits that it provides, public diplomacy provides, bringing students here to the people we work with. And that has for many, many years been has moved members of Congress who wanted to be seen as a leader in the world. In this moment right now, it's about how are those dollars impacting my district and most likely impacting what they call normal people in my district, people who live in my district, work in my district. It may impact you as a former USAID or State Department employee, but that's not as much of an interest to them as what's happening right now in my district. So those would be some of my suggestions.
Those are great suggestions. I really appreciate the one about changing up the language and the terms and the frameworks, because I think you're right. We've all been guilty of framing everything in public diplomacy speak, which is great as far as it goes. Just one more question before we turn to the audience. And this is really kind of pushing a little further on the previous question where I was asking you about what we could do better in terms of engaging Congress. And that is, what about outside the Beltway? Now, we are a national association, and we do often talk about the need to move beyond this ring of fire, perhaps, but to find ways to be effective elsewhere. Do you have any suggestions along those lines?
So I think that is exactly where you should be working, and I have lots of suggestions. So some of them, so what I would say is engage directly with your member of Congress, senator in the district. Go to their events, invite them to events that you put together. Work with universities in your area that have received international students over the years through programs that the State Department has supported. Member of Congress will show up at their university. They are concerned about what's happening to the universities across this country. They've taken a lot of direct action to make sure that funding for the NIH was restored. And I think now the question is, okay, so NIH resources were millions, right? Ours are hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. So I think we just need to keep reminding them that there are benefits to their home districts. And so my immediate thought goes to universities. We work a lot with local Elks clubs and the Rotary. You know, Rotary is very involved in polio eradication. They're very popular with members of Congress. So think about what are the local organizations in your area that you could start to be engaged with. We work a lot with chambers of commerce, because chambers of commerce are companies that are inevitably somehow connected to countries where we're working. So think about how to make connections with them. Who are your natural allies, but also understand that in a time in Washington where so many things are changing in so many places, there are also going to be people who will say, I really care about your issue, but I am not able to help you today because I'm worried about tariffs. I'm worried about X, Y, or Z. And I think really understanding, okay, so today you don't want to help me because you're worried about tariffs on your company, but maybe in 6 months we can work together. Things are gonna get resolved, and then there'll be other issues people will be able to engage in.
I know that's really helpful advice, but in particularly the sense that it is, although it seems like a short-term crisis, it is a longer game, and an investment in the process could be really fruitful. Well, thank you so much, Michele. So I think it's only fair to turn this over to the rest of you for your questions. And I think we have the first question already lined up. Please introduce yourself as you ask your question. Thank you.
Well, this is on, and I think it's on. Is this working now? Yes. Okay. My name is Susan Johnson. I'm a retired Foreign Service officer and now serving as the president of the Association for Diplomatic Studies and Training. We're a nonpartisan educational 501c3 organization. We've been around for about 40 years now. And our flagship program is American Foreign Affairs Oral History. And we have a large collection, the world's largest, of diplomatic and development and foreign affairs oral history. We are now looking at how we can expand our outreach and move from social media to in-person and partnerships around the country. And the question that I have for you is to sort of take advantage of your advice. So we have been going around the country with using stories, very specific stories from our oral history collection that illustrate in very relatable terms how American foreign policy professionals have done something overseas that helps American citizens, American exporters, American business, American farmers, American artists, et cetera, as well as educators. And we've divided this up in our oral history by state. So we can pull oral histories from diplomats from states around the country. All of this is in support of what our long-term mission is, which is to strengthen public understanding of and appreciation for diplomacy, development, and international engagement, and also to offer resources that strengthen the knowledge of practitioners, current and future practitioners, by lessons learned, by what other people have done. So my question is, after all that intro, is how do you think we can best use these stories that we have, which are short and to the point, and we can organize them or select them by state or by sector. So if we're going to a state where farmers are big constituents, we can give them stories that relate to how American diplomats or development people have helped farmers, American farmers. So how can we best use these stories in partnership or in conjunction with other people who are doing this, so that because we're really primary source material and we don't necessarily have the capacity to spread it out ourselves directly. So we're looking for partners and also access to audiences that are not the usual audiences. So that we can we have, for example, high school lesson plans built around oral history to engage high school students in a way that makes diplomacy or development or whatever seem exciting. So I would love to have your thoughts on how this resource could be better shared, who we might partner with, and what maybe any priorities that you see for it. So
Happy to think
Thank
about that a little bit with you. I love oral histories, and I have to admit my favorite, some of my favorite stories have come from former Foreign Service officers from USAID who tell me about everything that they did in Vietnam and other places before this was thought about. I have a couple ideas on this one. One is that I think I really appreciate at the end of your comment that you said we have to get to people who don't hear about this. Because one of the things that we've discovered, and this is not like rocket science, but is that we are talking to ourselves. And it might make us feel better. We may go onto Instagram and see things, and it might make us feel better if somebody's saying something, but it is not getting to those people who are the decision makers. And it's definitely not getting into the Trump administration and others who are in political appointments. So a couple of things I would say. First of all, I'm sure you're already collaborating with USAID Alumni Association. They're doing a huge push right now on oral histories just because of everything that's happening. I think as you think about unusual places, I would think about podcasts. And there are particular podcasts that are out there that this administration is very tuned into. Lots of veterans are doing podcasts about world affairs that are very popular with this administration, and trying to figure out how to build a relationship with them and how to get them to start telling your stories. Have your folks come on as guests. I'm not suggesting anyone should go on Joe Rogan, but podcasts like his are ones that are making a difference, that are breaking through, that are being heard. I think also thinking about how to use your stories, your local stories in local papers or local websites or publications that members of Congress use. So really maybe thinking about here are the top 6. And we actually, as USGLC, I don't know if you all are members of ours, but we do have a priority list of members of Congress across the House and Senate and across both parties. You could say, I'm going to take 2 or 3 from this list and really figure out how could we get to Senator Thune and share stories from folks who live in South Dakota who were Foreign Service officers, but thinking through those things. And then in terms of students, I think see if you can connect to things that already exist. You're probably doing this, but things like Model UN, they're always looking for content. Some of the high school debate organizations are looking for content for their students who are debating, but sharing stories through kind of non-traditional means, I think really can make a difference.
Having said so much, I hate to go back for a little addendum, but I forgot to mention that we also are very active on the Hill, and we have been for a few years trying to introduce ourselves as a resource to different offices, but also in conjunction with advocacy for a commemorative coin that would commemorate and recognize the value of diplomacy, development, and engagement. And so we're sort of, well, we were halfway there in the 118th Congress, and now it's being introduced by Republicans. So we hope to get the other half of the way in the 119th. But part of all that is to be a steady, consistent presence on the Hill. And so to the extent that we can carry some other messages, because we're up there a lot, and we're using our wonderful intern team to go up as well, because sometimes younger voices and faces just are connecting better up there than some of the rest of us.
Yeah. And feel free to be in touch with me. We also have a very active social media platform. Sometimes you'll see it as a USGLC platform. Other times you will see things that look familiar but are coming from other sources across the community. And I bet your stories would actually be really interesting X posts. We're doing a lot of audiovisual type things, so please be in touch.
Mike, did we have an online question to go to first, or how do we?
We do.
Okay.
This is from Lynn Weil, who is the co-chair of our ACE committee, the advocacy committee. She says USGLC has a solid track record of pushing back against deep cuts in the Function 150, the international affairs budget. Even after they have been proposed by an administration, phone calls and letters to Congress have been helpful in this pushback. Which of the two would you recommend? And if phone calls, should they go to district and state offices or to offices in DC?
So I would recommend phone calls to district offices because you are more likely to get a person and you are more likely to be heard.
I'm jumping the queue, I'm afraid. Carl Stoltz, co-president with Vivian of the PDCA, but I just wanted to follow up on Susan, your excellent thoughts, and Michelle, your response as well. I'm sort of presaging a little bit of what we hope to do through PDCA in the coming year. So sneak preview for everyone today. First of all, next week, the Global Ties is going to be here in Washington, where we have organizations in every state of people devoted to international education and exchange. I mentioned that to everyone because we should not lose that opportunity to engage with them as well. But PDCA has 400 members, almost all of whom have experience in public diplomacy working with the media, and they live all over the country. And even the ones who live in the DC area, many come from another part of the country before they started their careers. We have a network already, and one of our goals this year is to invigorate that network and tell everybody to go to their hometown media, local paper, blog, influencers, whatever, and share a story. So with your permission, Susan, we will also share your stories and anyone else's stories, and just ask all of our members to find at least one opportunity this year to engage hometown media and help explain to the public that doesn't have a lot of overseas experience why what we do matters. Thank you.
That's amazing. And I think it's well needed. And I think there's often a lot of advocacy that happens. I have my back to you, and I'm really sorry. There's a lot of advocacy that happens when the Hill's taking a vote or when something's happening. Then it goes quiet and then it gets active again. Depends on the Hill. I think also remembering to thank your members of Congress. So if your member has continuously over the last 20 years been a supporter of these things, for the last 9 months, he or she has not been, don't give up. Thank them for their prior support and encourage them to continue to be supportive, and give them reason why, as a constituent, it benefits the district that you live in. I'm not Pollyannish. I know I see what's happening in Washington, but I also know that many members of Congress continue to support work that we were doing as a community, and that there will be opportunity for them to raise their voice. So thank yous. Everyone loves a thank you.
Hi, I'm Joel Fishman, immediate past president of PDCA. As Vivian, Carl, and Susan mentioned, we're all doing much of the same thing, including social media, a big social media presence. Is there an active network of all of us who are working on these issues, maybe a little differently, but a lot of parallels? Is there an active network that meet, coordinate, and reinforce each other's work?
Tell you about that. I couldn't have paid you.
If not, how can we build one?
Yeah. No, thank you. There is an active network. So one of my other displays here is, so USGLC is a membership organization. We work very closely. And since February, we've been organizing what are called rapid response team calls. They meet every other Friday. And if it gets busy, we'll meet every Friday. And those calls are an opportunity for organizations. We usually get between 150 and 175 people on the line every Friday that we do it, where we talk about what's happening on the Hill, what people are doing in response. We talk about communications things people are doing. We talk about initiatives people are doing. So we would welcome people to be part of that conversation. It is membership based. And so organizations can join, and then 1 or 2 people from their organizations can join, or individuals can join. So go to our website, there's this page. We used to invite everybody to join that call. And just recently we've had to go back to just membership being on the call, mostly for financial reasons, as every organization. So I'd encourage you to be on that call. We send out regular emails in between the calls with updates, and also provide access to things. We do things like Alex Natsios, who was son of Andrew, done development work for 25 years. He's launched a new podcast about development and telling stories, hearing from people who are directly engaged. He was on our call last week. We invite people to come share things like that. And we'd love to have PDCA and others of you as part of our membership.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
So much. All right, another online.
This question is from Yasal Ahmar, who's a graduate student at Oklahoma State University. He's from Pakistan. He says, how do you see the current situation regarding international students? Is there any possibility of change? Every new policy and executive order is causing growing unease among international students who are unable to comprehend how the situation is going to pan out for them and their future prospects.
I don't have any good or insights on to what will happen with international students. I do know that it's causing a lot of angst. I mentor about a half a dozen international students from my college who both graduated and also are still in school. I think it's a tough time. And I think people need to just be aware of what's happening in the news, aware of the of the new rules as they get set off and on. And I think all of us who are not international students, but care passionately about international students having the ability to come to the United States and study. Because we know if they don't come to the United States, they may go to other countries, some which we'd be okay with and some that we wish they wouldn't go to. And so I think we all have to raise our voices, as you already are, but also specifically, not just on the public diplomacy programs at the State Department, but also on some of these other issues if you care passionately. Because again, at some point, at points in the process, Congress has stood up. Congress has said something, and we are hopeful that with enough noise coming and support from their constituents, that they will become good stewards of the way forward.
Thank you. Next question. Yeah.
Hello. Little shorter. Hi, my name's Anella Auer, and I am a retiree, but I previously worked at Pan American Health Organization, World Health Organization, just down the street. And prior to that, I worked with US Peace Corps as a volunteer, recruiter, country desk officer in Guatemala, Puerto Rico, and here in DC. I really have a comment, actually, as opposed to a question. And it was about the oral histories, and it just got me thinking. A perfect fit for engaging is the National Peace Corps Association. They have, other than the national group, they have Friends of Country of Service groups, and they have Where You Live groups. And if I'm not mistaken, they probably have them in every state. In addition, many members of Congress are former Peace Corps volunteers, and it's near and dear to your heart. Anyone, probably people in this room, anyone who's an RPCV, it sticks with you forever. So I think it's a natural, consistent constituency. They do maybe not oral histories, I'm not sure if they do that, but they do a lot of interviewing of return volunteers, and they share their service. You know, they're passionate about diplomacy. Many of them go into public service after Peace Corps. I just think it would be a wonderful group to engage with. So I would encourage, you know, anybody that would be another area.
So we engage often with the National Peace Corps Association. They're a really important constituency. Can I just raise one other thing? You all were asking kind of what could you do? What could it look like? I think one of the other things that we are doing, and a lot of members of our community broadly are doing, is really thinking about how can this administration see what we were doing as a benefit? And so we are working with a ton of folks in the international development space, and I'd love to work with some of you to prepare some ideas for how could they continue some of the development work under the new America First rubric. So for example, we have just put out publicly a one-page document that looks at some of the other global health programs other than HIV, AIDS, TB, malaria, and polio, and framed them as how they could be part of the America First agenda. So specifically, there was a neglected tropical diseases program. It was very much a public-private partnership where the drug companies provided the drugs free of charge, and USAID and other entities then were distributing them in country and actually are quite close to eradicating some diseases, which we haven't seen in the United States in years, but are quite a problem not mortality issues, but more morbidity issues. So if there would be an interest, and I'm happy to work with all of you and some others in thinking about how the global diplomacy programs, with what parts of them may be attractive to this administration that could be framed in that way. We just did a paper on economic corridors, which is related to their interest in access to critical minerals, And then what could you do around that extraction exercise, which, what could you do around that extraction exercise to leave the country from where you're extracting the minerals in a better place going forward? And we're trying to kind of start to think through what are some of these issues. There are also political appointees that have been appointed in various positions. Some of them are confirmed, some of them not, or will never be confirmed, but are more special envoys who have very specific interests. And so how can you work with some of them to, as they pursue their interests within the administration, to push forward America First foreign policy, to actually incorporate some of what we were doing into what their work is. So it is it's an important exercise because there are political appointees who have come into this administration who also want, now that there's been a lot of changes in the department and in other agencies, they want to rebuild and want to have a new vision of how to move forward. And so we're working with them, as are many of our members, to help them do that in a way that is consistent with this administration. So I'd encourage you to think that way too, and kind of think how we move forward.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. That a very particular kind of outreach, focusing on interests. Really good. Do we have another online or show? Yeah.
We do have another online question. This is from a former USAID Foreign Service Officer, Michele Dworkin. I commend USGLC for your efforts to advocate for support for U.S. diplomacy. I was a USAID FSO for 17 years and worked as a congressional liaison officer for one of my tours. We had allies on both sides of the aisle. As you mentioned, the USAID Alumni Association and others have been very active with Hill messaging. Given the destruction of USAID, what is the realistic advocacy goal around the reinstatement of international development assistance, especially with prior Hill allies?
So our work right now is very focused on a couple things. One was we worked very closely with Hill allies and others to ensure that there were offices within the State Department that were focused on global development issues. So there is an undersecretary for that oversees many of these offices, and we had a very big focus on that. We also had a focus on ensuring that there were still connective tissue between the programs. So at one point, there was an organization chart that was released that had the health office here and the food office here and the resource office here, and a lot of the reform actually put most of those things under one cone. So it was really important to kind of continue that connectivity. We're also working very closely with the new assistance offices in each of the regional bureaus to make sure that they are able to connect with those technical offices as they think about how to move forward. And then USGLC has always been focused on resources. And we are very focused on the annual appropriations process. And so, for example, the legislation that was reported out of the House Foreign Affairs Appropriations Committee was a 20% cut to foreign assistance. It was not the 80% cut that was recommended by the administration. It was a 20% cut. And in fact, the chairman has included many of the programs that many of us support in that bill with very clear language. So we're very focused on how to keep that resource level as high as possible. It is clear that the two rescissions packages were setbacks, but there were also significant resources in the tens of billions of dollars that were obligated at the end of the fiscal year. We thought we would be losing potentially $16 billion to be expired at the end of the fiscal year, and we lost a couple million, plus the rescission of $5 billion. So I think it's important to understand the environment that we're in. Economically, the country is on a different trajectory, but we will be working very carefully to make sure the 150 account continues to be robustly supported. Peter.
Hello, Peter Kovac, retired public diplomacy officer, PD specialist, PDCA fan and former board member. I have a question related to the subtitle of our session today. It seems to me, I've been around 45 years, that diplomacy is changing in some pretty fundamental ways. Not necessarily for a billboard that promises a career of influencing Washington thinking. We're in a different media age. Think tanks, intelligence agencies have strengthened. Washington leaders of either party have a lot more sources of information than in my day when we were actually listened to from the field sometimes. And with USAID and the aid endeavor going forward, I see a major change is that oftentimes we in the country team would question our aid colleagues about a project and what the driving idea behind it was, and they would invoke development theory, and we would say, well, we have a strategic mission plan. How does it relate to that? Now it seems to me, however it goes forward, there's more of an emphasis on strategy-driven aid programs. What's in the context of what you're describing in advocacy, how do these changes in the actual practice and the environment we work in influence your thinking?
So I think I welcome anyone else to answer as well. I feel like I've been talking too long. I think what I would say is that is exactly what the administration, if you were to ask them, why did they make the changes they made? That was what they would say, is that this is an opportunity to both streamline what we were doing, but also to make sure that everything is connected and everybody is on the same page. I can argue both sides of that, having done it in various different places. I think it's also very consistent with what's happening across many of the G7 and like-minded donors as well. So as we all remember, DFID in the UK is now part of FCDO. Before that, Canada brought everything together. Before that, Australia brought everything together. There's still some places where the agencies are separate, but I do think there is a greater focus that way. And there's also a greater focus on how can our international diplomacy, development, other aspects of this space be part of the global economic security discussion. And so as there's a big focus on the Development Finance Corporation, same is happening in the UK, same is happening at the EU. So I think that there's also a reevaluation of the state of the world right now. And so therefore, what should be the key tools of the effort?
Thank you. So we have a little time left, and we have clearly a lot of questions. So what I'd like to do is take a leaf from academic panels and cluster our questions. So if I could ask, let me try to do 3 at a time quickly. So if you could state your name and make your question as brief as possible, we'll do 3, and then you can run through them, because this is a great conversation. I don't want anyone to miss out. So really quickly.
Hello, my name is Christopher Mullins. I'm a business owner, life insurance agent with a financial service company. My question, throughout your journey to get to where you are now, what were some systems that you put in place, that not put in place, but were created and revealed to you throughout your journey? And which one, if one or multiple, really activated you on the path that you're on of discovery, giving value, and just have been successful for you?
Great, thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Josh Manley. I'm with the Public Diplomacy Council of America Board of Directors as their Rising Professionals member. And my question relates to young professionals and college students. We're here at George Washington University. I'm curious if you had any words of encouragement for rising juniors, seniors, or young professionals who are interested in careers in international affairs. What advice would you give them on why they should continue to focus on the field and make a contribution?
Great, thank you, Josh. And we'll take this last one for this cluster.
Okay, hello. My name is Ed Findlay. I am a PDCA member and currently retiring Foreign Service Officer. I wanted to ask a quick question about the global context. We've been speaking a great deal about the national context, which is extremely important. But I think it's fair to say that there is a good deal of uncertainty, if not skepticism, out there about U.S. global leadership, particularly in development and other sectors. So what, if you care to speculate, you think the State Department might do to help maintain trust and credibility with our partners globally in this sector. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much.
Well, let me just say a couple things. I think that, and maybe it jumps off of the end of the last question, which is, so I've been working not as many years as many of you, but I've been in the global development space for almost 30 years. And I have throughout that entire point in my career, all those years, have said, we need reform, we need to do things differently, we need to respond differently. I will say that there are still directives for water and education and specific programs in the appropriations bill that I worked with Congresswoman Nita Lowey to put in 2008. And so we would always say the world has changed. Do we need to still be doing this way? And we still were doing this way. In some cases, USAID and State Department have made changes, tried to respond. We were working much more closely with local organizations, trying to build the capacity of local organizations so we could graduate from countries. Former Administrator Mark Green had put in place country roadmaps, which identified those things that were limiting countries' growth and ability to move forward. And we were trying to adjust funding to move towards those kinds of initiatives. So I say that to say for young professionals, I think there will be a very important place for diplomats and development experts and defense and intelligence and every other piece of the world and development finance in a world going forward. It is going to look different and change, and things that look different can be very scary. But you actually, many of the young professionals who are watching and in the room, you didn't live in the old system. So for you, this isn't scary. It's scary for those of us who have gray hair and things. So I would just say, I think it is going to be different, and you're going to be able to embrace it and move it forward and take it to the next level. That doesn't mean that it has to look exactly like this administration, that it will look exactly like this administration has asserted over the last 6 months. I think we are already seeing President Trump adjust the way he works and things. And we all know that if there is true peace in the Middle East, if there is an agreement, that assistance and diplomacy are going to have to be on overdrive to make that work. If there is peace in Ukraine, again, there will need to be assistance and diplomacy that will have to work and be on overdrive. And that we will need to continue to engage with our southern neighbors, our northern neighbor, everybody else. So all that to say that I'm an eternal optimist. I am always trying to see what is left. And I do think that there are opportunities. There are people who care. People on Capitol Hill care. People in our districts care. People in the administration care. And we will find ways to move forward. It will look different, but it will be hopefully more successful.
Great. Well, that's could be an inspiring note to conclude on. However, we do have 2 more questions. If you could make them really quick. Come on up, gentlemen.
And don't make them depressing.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's keep on the high note. Your name, your question very quickly, and to round us out.
Yeah, my name is Peter Valdez. I'm with ADST. In your view, what's the biggest misconception about the American public has about foreign aid diplomacy?
Excellent question. Mm-hmm.
Very good question. Hello, my name is Ethan Cooper. I'm a senior intern at the ADST, and I'm also a research assistant at the NSI and a grad student at the Bush School of Public Service and Government. Kind of actually on the topic of public outreach, I am an alumni of the University of Illinois and I maintain a good relationship with Model United Nations at the University of Illinois and the history department. So I'm just very curious about what strategies you might think of that we could discuss or conduct outreach to young professionals at these universities, particularly at universities with a large amount of international college students that might be feeling a lot of stress or a lot of anxiety, especially trying to continue outreach and education and knowledge of public diplomacy at some of these universities.
Great. Thank you, Ethan.
So I think that let's see. So I think in terms of public outreach, I think we do need to be doing public outreach to all kinds of students. We need to be sharing as much as we can our oral histories, things that have worked, things that have not worked. I think also thinking about universities that are in states that are represented by Republican members of Congress are really important to go to. Think about going to the University of Oklahoma. Senator Langford is a very large supporter of international assistance and diplomacy. He spoke at an event we had in April with 200 folks. Many of them, were energy companies and other things like that, but they all have business interests, and he's very supportive. So think about how, as alumni, as members of PDCA, you all can go to universities that are a little bit off the beaten path. And some of them, like the Bush School and others, are in Republican districts and states. In terms of the biggest misconception, I think, I don't know, I would leave that to you all. You all are experts on public diplomacy. You have seen kind of the laundry list of what's been asserted about development, about diplomacy. Some of them are, I think some of them are exaggeration. I know some of them are exaggeration. Some of them are taking a $10,000 program and acting like it's a $10 million program. I'm fully supportive of nearly everything that we ever funded out of USAID. I'm sure I could find a handful of things that I wasn't supportive of, but I think we were all trying to do the best that we could do in the environment that we were working in and trying to make a difference in the paradigm that we were thinking. So let me leave it there and just say thank you so much for, you look like you have something you want to say. Because you are a PD expert, maybe you have something.
Just to that question about the biggest misconception. I mean, one is that somehow our day-to-day work is partisan. And I think one thing the oral histories helps do is to show what people are actually doing, and how your partisan inclination, whatever they may be, has nothing to do with that work, whatever it may be. So that, I think that's one important thing that we're doing to show, because there's a perception that public servants, whichever administration they are working under, are somehow partisan and advancing and cheerleading for that party instead of the other one. And so we're caught in between. And so that to the extent we can show that the nature of our work, and most of the people I know who've been in this work for 35, 40 years had no idea, didn't know, didn't care what the partisan inclinations of their colleagues were, because it wasn't relevant to our work, our day-to-day work. So that's one important thing we can do in terms of misconceptions. The other misconception is that foreign assistance is at the expense of Americans. And there's so many ways to show that that's not true, that how much of the money is spent here with American farmers, companies, et cetera, but how it directly contributes to the America's interest. So that's a whole area that could be broken down into bite-sized pieces and talked about in relatable ways to your average American who's not normally following foreign policy. And that's the challenge of the language, getting away from our PDA speak or USAID speak or State Department speak or whatever it may be.
And that connects perfectly back to who is at your table when you go meet with a member of Congress, when you talk back in your district about why this is important. Bring a farmer into the conversation, bring a business owner into the conversation, bring as many people who come from as many different backgrounds to the conversation, so that it's clear that we are really benefiting America and the world.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your extraordinary comments, for the great questions from the audience. It certainly reinforces my faith in all of us, a community of practitioners, past, present, and future. And I think together we can and must embrace the change and accept the difference. And if we do that, we will be okay.
We will be okay. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, one of my favorite parts of serving as co-chair of the PDCA's Foreign Committee is recognizing efforts. Thank you, Michelle and US Global Leadership Coalition for sharing your insights with us today. This conversation really highlighted the important connection between diplomacy, development, and advocacy, and offered great ideas on how we can continue strengthening our work, both within PDCA and beyond Washington. Thank you, Vivian, our PDCA co-president, for moderating today's discussion, especially amid your very busy travel schedule. I'd also like to recognize Sherry Mueller, our former president of PDCA, who helped shape today's program and inspires today's topic. Like Sherry and Vivian, so many of our members work tirelessly to advance PDCA's mission, and I want to thank all of you, as well as our partner organizations, program participants, and attendees for your ongoing support and dedication and great questions. As a small token of appreciation, we have prepared a PDCA coaster for our speaker and moderator. I'll hand them back to you later. Okay. And we look forward to continuing this important conversation. Before we wrap up, just a quick few announcements. Our next event, Life After State, Job Opportunities in Academia, will take place online on Tuesday, October 21st at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Special thanks to Karen Walker, PDCA Academic Study Committee co-chair, for helping organize the session and bringing together a wonderful group of panelists. This new series, which began in August, explores different career pathways for public diplomacy professionals. Our next November 1st Monday forum with details will be coming soon on our PDCA event page, as well as in our weekly newsletter. Please also join me in thanking PDCA co-president Carl Stoltz, who organized another successful event just last Friday. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Judy. And we've had a lot of thank yous already. I just want to thank everyone who came and participated in our event last Friday at Decor Bacon House and all those people who made it possible. And a special message to anyone who is a new member of PDCA. First, thank you for your service. If you were RIFed or retired or forced to retire this year, your service is by no means diminished by that. We welcome you as members of PDCA to continue to be active in fighting in the future for our cause. And if anyone attending today is not yet a member of PDCA and was excited by that thrilling program that Vivian emceed and wishes to become a member, please see me or other members afterwards, and we will tell you how to do it. If you were RIFed, resigned, or otherwise left federal service in the last year, your membership is free for this year in, again, appreciation for your service. So thank you very much.
Okay.